Andor has got all of those watching it hyped and wanting more. Some people are even saying it's the best Star Wars we've had in a long time. Now Palpatine officially plays a part in the series, it's left people wondering, where is Palpatine during Andor?
Do it.
Today we're taking a look at where Palpatine is, what he's doing during Andor, and how and when we can expect the Dark Lord to make his return to our screens. In the years following the Revenge of the Sith, the Dark Lord actually spent little time running the galaxy himself. With the day-to-day filtering down the ranks, Palpatine devoted most of his time to achieving his greatest goal, immortality and ultimate power. Something all Sith crave. Whilst Palpatine made the most headway in his search for immortality, which would also bring him ultimate power after the formation of the Empire, it's important to note that he secretly had this plan up his sleeve way before the prequel trilogy even begun. He spent most of his life trying to achieve this.
I have waited a long time for this moment.
In 54 BBY, which is 22 years before the Phantom Menace, he was exploring the possibilities of combining Night Sister magic with the dark side in a bid to achieve his end goal. The Night Sisters were able to resurrect their dead, however the deceased only returned as zombie corpses and lacked any real intelligence, which, if you're trying to rule the galaxy, wouldn't go down too well. It wasn't until just after the Phantom Menace that Palpatine finally began to put the pieces of the jigsaw together. After becoming aware of the clone army being built by the Kaminoans, the famous cloners, Palpatine most likely realised the best way to cheat death was to start again in a new body, rather than to remain in the one he had. In the time between Revenge of the Sith and 12 BBY, Palpatine discovers Exegol, the forbidden planet of the Sith, home to the Sith Eternal, who were loyal to whoever bore the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. Here's where it gets really interesting. Palpatine instructed the cult to begin the process of creating him a clone body, likely utilising the Kaminoan cloning methods alongside ancient dark side secrets known by the Sith Eternal, in the event of a premature demise before he could perfect his plan. The Sith Eternal also began experimenting with the Black Wing virus, an ancient virus created by the Sith over 4,500 years ago, in a bid to achieve immortality whilst remaining in their original body. Remember I said all Sith crave this power. The Sith Eternals also began working on a different type of clone, called a Strandcast, which would eventually lead to the creation of Snoke. Strandcast is a hybrid clone consisting of Palpatine's DNA alongside that of other specimens, which we'll dig into in a moment. Palpatine kept a lot of secrets, many of which his right-hand man and apprentice Darth Vader wasn't aware of. Some of you may know this next part, but for those of you that don't, as the years went on, Vader grew all the more curious as to what his master was secretly up to and travelled to Exegol himself, where he saw Palpatine's Strandcast clones hibernating inside their tanks. One of these clones would go on to be Snoke. Snoke always held a great interest in Vader, despite the fact he didn't emerge until Vader's death in Return of the Jedi. You could say this was Palpatine manipulating Snoke's mind to be fascinated with Vader as a way to seduce Ben Solo to the dark side. However, I don't think this is the case. Snoke was always a sentient being, with Palpatine only having an influence on his mind. When Vader travelled to Exegol just after The Empire Strikes Back, he found the clones alongside Luke Skywalker's severed hand. One of the clones made a groaning sound as Vader passed by, whilst all the others remained motionless. Either this particular clone wasn't in hibernation, or was just resting, or it sensed another powerful Force user which imprinted on its earliest memories and fueled his fascination with the Dark Lord over the following years. After many failed experiments, in the year 12 BBY, which is 7 years before Andor, Palpatine succeeded with the creation of a human male named Daffin, a non-identical Palpatine clone who would eventually go on to father Rey. Although fit and healthy, Daffin lacked any connection to the Force, rendering him useless to Palpatine as he needed a host body to take over that was capable of harnessing the Force and holding his immense power. Palpatine referred to this clone as the Abomination, a little bit harsh, but allowed this clone to live as its veins flowed with Palpatine blood. He believed it could come in useful one day. His search continues. Alongside achieving immortality, Palpatine also wanted to extend his reach even further throughout the galaxy, whilst also exploring the unknown regions, which is how he came across Thrawn, an extremely intelligent near-human male who possessed great knowledge of the unknown regions and the dangers it posed. Palpatine brought Thrawn into the Empire and inducted him into the Imperial Academy. He would one day become a Grand Admiral. Whilst he was comfortable enough with the Empire and the grip it had over the galaxy, Palpatine always felt unease about the potential of a new generation of Jedi returning. Although most of the Jedi of old were now gone and the scales were heavily tipped towards the dark side, Force-sensitive children were still being born, which resulted in Palpatine creating the Inquisitorius, a group of dark side Force users, some of which were fallen Jedi, with the sole task of hunting down any Force-sensitives, including children, and destroying them if they wouldn't serve the Empire, which can be seen during the animated show Star Wars Rebels, as well as various books and games, and now also the Kenobi series. If you think back to Andor Episode 4 in Luthen's antique shop, you can see various different items on display in the background, such as a Gungan shield and even Jedi and Sith holocrons. One of the items that caught a lot of people's attention is the Sith Stalker armor, which is something that ties into Palpatine's story outside of canon in Star Wars Legends. In 2BBY, which is within the timeline of Andor Season 2, Darth Vader had a secret apprentice called Galen Marek, known as Starkiller, who he trained in the ways of the Sith for over 20 years, with Vader's ultimate goal being to overthrow the Emperor with the help of his apprentice. Often as he did in the movies, Palpatine foresaw Vader's plan with Starkiller, confronted him about it and forced him to turn on Starkiller. Following the Emperor's command, Vader used the Force and threw his apprentice out of the ship's observation window in which they were both travelling on. However, Starkiller survived, and Vader spent the following 6 months nursing him back to health in secret whilst planning a second surprise attack on the Emperor. This time, Starkiller would integrate within the growing rebellion, giving them a powerful ally, in a bid to distract Palpatine from Vader's plan. Starkiller's time with the rebellion rubbed off on him, and a powerful Force user opted to become a Jedi. During the final confrontation, Palpatine orders Vader to destroy his former apprentice turned Jedi, who actually gets the better of Vader in combat, proving how strong he has become. Whilst Palpatine tried to goad Starkiller into killing Vader and becoming his new apprentice, similar to how he did with Luke in Return of the Jedi, another Jedi called Ram Kota launched an attack on Palpatine, but was struck by Force lightning. Starkiller, in true Jedi fashion, sacrificed himself by standing in the way of the Emperor's attack, exploding in the process, which almost killed Palpatine and Vader as well. Palpatine's likely return in the galaxy would likely be in a political capacity given the nature of the show and how heavily it focuses on the galaxy's politics, away from the Jedi and Sith. We learn from Colonel Yularen in Episode 7 that the Emperor is well aware of the attack on Aldhani and is taking actions to prevent something like that happening again by granting the ISB greater powers to deal with it. News of the attack on Aldhani spread across the Imperial worlds like wildfire, as we can see with it being relayed by news outlets on Coruscant only a few hours later. Attacks of this kind will bring unease to those loyal to the Empire, with the fear of the galaxy erupting into another war, whilst this will also inspire more rebels to rise up and take a stand, which we can see with Marva once she heard about the news on Ferrix. Palpatine was forced to tighten the Empire's fist with the introduction to severer punishments for any suspected anti-Imperial activity, which in turn will also affect many of the innocent civilians that have nothing to do with any rebel group. While the stricter measures will go some of the way in reinforcing Palpatine's rule, his hand will be forced again, perhaps in the wake of the Aldhani attack or the next one, to make the rare public appearance in an effort to deter anyone from thinking outside of their usual box, likely coming across as a man whose only wishes are to help the galaxy, whilst portraying the rebellion as the real threat. This show of face from Palpatine will likely come in the form of a Senate meeting, a concept carried over from the days of the Republic, a tool Palpatine is using to keep the galaxy believing in his good intentions, or a less likely way would be to appear as a hologram, perhaps on TV screens, although I think this way would be far less effective. One thing I didn't mention at the start is why Palpatine should appear in Andor. Andor is a show that primarily focuses on the lesser known characters, the day-to-day folk living under the boot of the Empire, rumoured to not include any Jedi or Sith characters at all. However, thanks to Palpatine's different faces, it would make sense for him to appear in the show as the Emperor, the sole ruler of the Empire, with likely no on-screen indications that he is indeed a Sith Lord. His standing and position in this regime is more than enough to warrant his on-screen return. Where Palpatine is physically during the Andor show is hard to pinpoint at any given time. Considering his quest for immortality, he could move frequently between his residence at the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, the Sith Citadel on Exegol, on board his Star Destroyer, or even on holiday back on his homeworld of Naboo. Regardless of where he is physically, at this point in Palpatine's life, he is firmly on track to achieving his final goal of immortality. with a clone vessel already prepared and cloning experiments continuing. Palpatine continues to test his apprentice Darth Vader, never really being fully convinced Anakin Skywalker was completely gone, with the Empire continuously seeking to expand their reach. Palpatine isn't yet aware that the true battle for the galaxy is only just beginning. Thanks for watching today's video, guys. Remember to leave a like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.